Hello and welcome back to This is Winter Sports, supported by Protect Our Winters UK and brought to you by the Passion Stories podcast. I'm your host Emma Cole and we have another cracking episode for you all about snow sports and the passion and why it matters, because this episode is crammed full of passion and purpose, and that is exactly why this podcast exists. Now, if you've ever seen anyone launch themselves down a ski jump and then off they fly, you will know that looks absolutely terrifying and epic at the same time. I think whenever I've watched ski jumping, it's been the one sport that everyone that is watching is just bamboozled. I mean, it is insane what these incredible athletes can do, flying through the air. And on the one hand, it looks so peaceful, but on the other hand, you're like, that adrenaline rush must be electric. So, who better than to bring on a fantastic ski jumper who actually also does cross-country skiing? And now this sport is called Nordic Combined, and I'm so excited to welcome Annika Malacinski, who competes for the US in Nordic Combined. Last year, Annika was ranked 15th in the world, and she's done some amazing things. But what is utterly mind-blowing is that Annika took up this sport less than a decade ago. She's going to share her whole story of how she came to do Nordic Combined. But it's more than that, because Nordic Combined is unique, and Nordic Combined is the only sport in the Winter Olympics where only the men are allowed to compete. I'm just going to drop that there and let Annika do the rest. So please welcome to the podcast, Annika Malacinski. Annika, thank you so much for coming on the Passion Stories podcast and the Winter Sports series. It is wonderful to have you on. How did you get into snow sports to begin with?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much. This podcast is so cool and I'm just so honored to be here. So that's a really fun story because I grew up in a paradise of a place in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. 13,000 people live there. It's a very active community. We have basically snow like Japan. So that's really amazing because we're so high in altitude. This snow is, we call it champagne powder. So I grew up there and I kind of grew up doing every single sport in the books. And my mom is Finnish, so I'm half Finnish. So I have a lot of like Nordic heritage in me as well. And I did grow up in Finland as well. So sports kind of came hand in hand in my life. My mom was a very high level swimmer growing up. My dad is a ski instructor. So both my brother and I were just like thrown into every sport possible.
Where did the cross-country skiing and the ski jumping, when did that appear?
Yeah, I have a really interesting story because when you start ski jumping, you're starting at the age of 6, 7, 8. Not usually any later than that, but I started at 16 and that's crazy. And every time I talk to people about this and I try to like relive my 16-year-old self and think like, what the hell was I actually thinking to just like start ski jumping fresh out of nothing? But like I said, like my brother and I, we just grew up doing so many sports. My life was sports and I loved it so much. And then at the age of 12, I really heavily committed to gymnastics. That started to be my passion. And I worked tirelessly in the gym over 25 hours a week as anywhere from 12 to 16 years old. And I had an amazing Hungarian coach. And at this time I was training in Finland. So I was doing like half and half the years, like half in Finland, half in America. And purely because my mom just wanted my brother and I to keep the language, to know that side of the family, spend time with my grandparents and just get to know the Scandinavian culture of things. And then my brother, who's 2.5 years younger than me, he committed to Nordic Combined at the age of 7, like a very normal age to commit to something like that. And so I go on, I love gymnastics. This is in my head like something that I want to pursue to the Olympics. And at the age of 16, my body was just taking so much of the hit of training and sprained ankles to dislocated shoulders. And it just became so painful that I just had to take a step away from the sport, which was probably one of the hardest things I had to do because my passion was just to train and get better in the gym. all of a sudden I was living a normal person's life, just going to school and having all this free time after. And I was just like, this is not what I want to do. I really truly feel that I am born for something more. So it was 2017. We have this really cool event in Steamboat. It's called Jumping and Jamming. And ski jumping is such a niche sport, and we don't have a lot of viewership in it, like especially in the US. But this competition on 4th of July, the whole entire town comes out and it's so, so cool. There's so many people there. So my brother was competing and he was 14 at the time. He jumped so far that he almost like beat the 20-plus-year-olds. And I was like, wow, that's so like inspiring. That's so cool. Why do I kind of feel like I want to try this? And then at the time in Steamboat, the smallest hill was a 40-meter ski jump. There was nothing smaller. So little me, or not little me, I guess I was 6. One day, just show up at the club. I'm putting on these boots. These ski jumping skis are so long. You have this really thick foam suit, and I just look like a complete like newbie. And I'm just like hiking up to the 40-meter ski jump. 40 meters doesn't seem too big, but as someone that's never experienced the feeling of ski jumping, in my head was like, I could die today. I don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to do a backflip, a front flip, a twist in the air, face plant? I don't know how ski jumping, because in the wintertime, you do have smaller hills because they're able to build it out of the snow. But in the summertime, like we're jumping on plastic. So they're like built in like tracks and plastic and everything like this. So when my brother many years back graduated to be able to ski jump the 40-meter ski jump, I remember he wasn't able to do it because he was so scared. He like gave out, he went back down. So that was my biggest thing in my head. I'm like, yeah, I'm better than my brother. I can do this. I don't even know how this is going to go, but I'm just going to send it. So I'm on the bar. I've never felt fear like this. I just remember the corners of my eyes are completely black, like tunnel vision. And I can't even feel a pulse anymore. It's going so fast. But I let go, and you're in this track. There's no pizza or stopping. You're going down this track once you let go. And I think I flew like the 10, 20, no, not even 20 meters, 10 meters that I flew, like arms flailing. And I got to the bottom, and that overwhelming, you overcame something and you overcame the fear and you just did it. And then the adrenaline rush that came with it, because I'm an adrenaline junkie. So that feeling that I got, I was like, holy shit, this is what I want to do. And I want to keep doing this. And in my head, it wasn't like I am pushing all the way up to the highest level. To me, this was like filling a void that I had lost in sport. Now I'm like on year 8 and on a World Cup circuit. I was 15th in the world last year after the season. So like everything came together, and I'm just so grateful for this journey that it led me on.
That is an amazing story. So, just to paint us a bit of a clearer picture, how long is a normal ski jump?
So right now we compete on a 90 meter
90.
in World Cup, and then we're slowly getting onto the big hills, which is 120-meter ski jumps.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is epic.
Yeah.
And you said that most people start ski jumping when they're sort of 6 or 7. What's the reason behind that? Is it because as a young kid you're kind of less fearful?
Yeah, exactly. Bingo. That's exactly why. When you're a kid, you don't like think about, what this could like, how you could get injured and things, and you just don't have that fear. So, like, that's why kids just will send off ski jumps or do these like more crazier sports, whereas like when you get older, you start to realize like, okay, like I could break bones doing this.
And so 16, 17-year-old you is now deciding to do ski jumping. Thinking about that fear, how have you trained yourself to push through something that other people that you might be competing against have naturally been doing that from such a young age?
I think that in the beginning, the way that I like progressed in the sport was really crazy. And I think that my biggest helper in that was that I would do things scared. Like it didn't matter how much fear I had or how much doubt I had. I was going to do it regardless. And I still to this day feel that, because in 2019 I dislocated my shoulder on really icy conditions, and ever since then I get back onto onto snow because we train the whole summer on plastic, and then usually November, December we get back onto snow. And those like first snow conditions are scary. It's bumpy, it's icy, and to put it in perspective, we're on like long planks. There's not edges on these skis, they're just long, long skis. And one of the reasons why I fell is it was just icy conditions. I didn't have the edges, so I just slipped and went right onto my shoulder and dislocated. And then I had to get surgery because I tore my labrum. But even now, I have kind of this PTSD in my head of that night. And so every time I start ski jumping back on snow, I have so much fear. After my first jump, I will be crying in relief because I can see myself falling and doing it all over again. But I think the most important thing is that I'm doing it. I'm doing it while I'm scared.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that you're talking about fear, because I feel like a lot of people see ski jumping and you just think, my gosh, that looks terrifying. What goes through your mind when you're holding on to that bar and all you can see is the jump ahead of you?
To be honest, like now on year 8, when I'm ski jumping 4 times a week, it's not the same kind of adrenaline that you get because that's something you're used to the feeling. And to be honest, ski jumping is not like the most dangerous sport in the world in any means. It's very consistent. Some crazy things can happen, but the feeling is consistent. You just kind of learn how to feel in the air and how to maneuver in basically doing the ski jump. So now, like getting back on snow, I definitely do feel that fear, and it will go away once I start doing it more and more. And now that we're starting our World Cup season next weekend in Trondheim, Norway, it's just going to be like in the back of the head. But when you go from the end of the World Cup season, which is middle of March, and then you don't ski jump until June, and you get back on the top of the ski jump and you feel like you've never done this in your whole entire life. But you take a couple months off and that like fear and adrenaline comes back. And then you take your first jump and you're like, oh yeah, okay, like this is easy. I can do this. Like it's muscle memory. But in the beginning, like it's just so funny to be at the top and being like, I don't think I've ever done this before. And I feel so scared to do this. And then you do it and you're like, okay, that was easy.
Oh, I love it. And I'd love to learn a bit more about how a ski jumper, where you put your arms, and you're sort of flying through the air, the arms are down and trying to be as aerodynamic as possible. What's happening in your mind and what are you thinking about at those moments?
In ski jumping, you have the distance that you go as well as style points. So we have judges at the top of the judges stand, and they're looking at like everything style. Your arms, you're supposed to land in a telemark. So just the style of the whole entire ski jump. But to be honest, when I'm competing, you already have those competition nerves. The most important part of the ski jump is the takeoff. You have less than a second to go into the right direction, jump at the right time, because if you're going too early, you don't get the full effect. If you're going too late, you don't get the full effect. So it has to be like exactly at the end of the ski jump, and you have to be pushing down, but your body has to be going forward. So that's, I think, the trickiest part about ski jumping. It's so mental. Like, how do you train yourself to get everything right in less than a second? So for me, it's not so much of like this style. It's more just getting the ski jump to go on time and into the right direction. And then things will follow with the training that you've done. But
it is such a cool sport. And you also combine it with cross-country skiing, and that's called Nordic Combined. How does that work in a competition?
Okay, so the coolest thing about what I think I do in this sport is that most athletes train for one sport and one sport only. But with Nordic Combined, you're training for two completely different sports. So one is ski jumping, and like I said, it's so mental. It's about the strength, the fast twitch muscles to get that explosive jump, and then also just having the balls to do it, first off. And then you're not done. So ski jumpers would take 2 jumps and then they add the scores up and then you're done for the day. But that's not the case with us. Once we're done with our one jump, let's say that I went like 95 meters with great style points and I was like first in ski jumping. That means that in the cross country, I would start at 0, 0. So I'm the first one to go out. And then depending on how short the other girls went or their style points, it's all calculated into a specific time onto the course. So second place could be going like 6 seconds after me. And then it's just like a cat and mouse chase kind of. And so whoever crosses the finish line first in the cross country skiing is the winner. So you could be like first in jumping, but if you're not fast at skiing, you could be like 10th place at the finish line. So that's what makes it so cool is it's a balance of being good at ski jumping and cross country skiing. And if you're doing too much of ski jumping, then you're going to be bad at cross country skiing. If you're doing too much cross country skiing, you're going to be bad at ski jumping. So it's finding the balance of two very, very different sports.
That is wicked. And on the cross country ski, how long is there a specific route? How long is the route, or does it vary between competitions?
So for men, it's 10 kilometers, and for the women, it's 5. We do have a couple competitions where we do like 7.5K, but for the most part, it's a 5K. So it's a pretty fast, like not quite a sprint, but almost, because it's 2 laps of 2.5K.
And I mean, I always find cross country skiing so beautiful, but it also looks so intense. And I've spoken to people before that say it's like a full body, very intense sport. How do you vary your training between one sport that is all about the mind and the strength, and then you've got cross country skiing?
It's a good question because every athlete kind of does their own way of figuring out what their body needs more of. And yeah, cross country skiing, it's a very gritty sport, you know, you're skiing your heart out, you're in a pain cave. I don't think most people on this earth understand the pain cave that you have to sit in cross country skiing. Or I mean, it correlates to running pretty well, but like you said, it is a full body workout. Like you're skiing but with poles. And then for the ski jumping, I feel like that's why it's so niche, is because no one thinks that they're going to be a ski jumper. It's kind of one of those like insane sports. Anybody that I talk to that comes to watch ski jumping, they just question like, how the hell am I able to do this? Because it's just looks so insane. And I think that's the reason why I do it. And then add the cross country aspect to it as well. But yeah, it is really technical. And I think that's what makes the sport so cool. And honestly, if I were to switch to ski jumping or cross country skiing, I feel it's just boring.
As someone who loves the outdoors, it's so frustrating that getting to epic places with my gear often means relying on planes or cars, because greener public transport options are limited, disconnected, and definitely not designed with adventure in mind. Take bikes on trains, for example. It can be a total nightmare, as every operator has different rules, every country has different policies, spaces are limited, and UK train prices, need I say more? That's why the Protect Our Winters UK Clean Miles campaign matters. They're calling for public transport that's affordable, reliable, well-connected, and built for adventure, so that we can reach the mountains in a greener, easier way. Transport is one of the biggest drivers of climate change, and we urgently need better options. Head to the link in the pod description now to sign the campaign. Yeah, I can totally see that. And so you've got the World Cup coming up, but obviously there is the Winter Olympics in February. However, Nordic Combined is not included for the women. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what's happened?
Let me tell you. It's a whole story. So, Nordic Combined has been in the Winter Olympics since the first ever one in 1924 in Genève, France. So, it is like a legendary legacy sport. And as in the US, it is quite a niche, small sport. Not a lot of people know about it. But when you come over to like the Nordic countries or Europe, like where I live in Norway, I mean, Nordic Combined is the like legendary sport here. So, when I started in 2017, it was kind of like trying to get the progression of women to do it, because it has never been available to women. Women would do it, but then see that there's no future, there's no competitions for it, so that they specialize in ski jumping or cross country skiing. So, what I feel like is so cool about my journey is like when I decided to do it, it was like this rise for women to do it as well. So, I mean, I went to my first ever Continental Cup, and then in 2021, it was the first ever World Cup for women in Ramsau, Austria, and then was the first World Championships in Oberstdorf, Germany. So I honestly think sport should be studied with the progression. For sports, it takes so long to like progress and get to that level, but it's absolutely insane. And to put it in perspective, like Heta Hirvonen, a Finnish Nordic Combined athlete, she's super young as well. Like I think she just turned 18. She is trying to qualify for the Olympics in ski jumping. Unfortunately, for Nordic Combined, that was denied. So she competed in the first World Cup last 2 weeks ago in Lillehammer for ski jumping, like specialized in ski jumping. And mind you, she does Nordic Combined, which is both. So she's like splitting her time, whereas ski jumpers are doing just ski jumping. And she was 10th in the World Cup for ski jumping. So it just
Wow.
puts it in perspective because I feel that a lot of people are like, you're not there because you're not good enough. And that's kind of like what the IOC told us as well. But then when you look at these cases, our level is there. So in 2022, the IOC made that decision to not add the women for 26, which was just like a horrible decision to make and took a lot of the other girls' dreams away. My world felt like it was crashing down after all the work that I had put into this. It was a really hard time, but that lit the fire in me to be like, this is so wrong. If anything, I've just learned how political the Olympics is because as a little girl, I'm like looking at the Olympics and I'm like seeing the grit and the journey and the stories of these athletes to be able to be at the Olympic stage, the highest level you can get to as an athlete. And then being in this whole process of being a sport that's denied for a specific gender, I've learned that it's not about that and it's about how much the Olympics can profit off of you. So in 2022, the men were in Beijing, and they had the lowest viewership. And when I questioned it a little bit further with the Olympic Committee, because we did have an opportunity to sit down with Kit McConnell, one of the IOC board members, and I questioned if he had counted the viewership for ski jumping and cross country skiing, and he wasn't able to answer the question. So it just seems like for them, they go to sleep at night while they're like taking so many dreams away to compete at that highest level.
And I mean, in those conversations with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, did they give pointers of, how women's Nordic combined could be considered in the Olympics for the future?
Yeah. And what's so frustrating is they gave us these pointers 4 years prior to 22 decision. So they wrote out what they wanted to see for women's Nordic combined to get to the Olympics. And we crossed off all of them like times two. We grew the sport. We got more nations to do it. We had enough nations, enough girls. One of their things is that they wanted to see more like variety on the podium, so different nations on the podium, because in Nordic sports, like Norway dominates. If you're looking at cross country skiing, I mean, like it's Norway, Norway, Norway. And then when women's ski jumping was added in 2014, which was also a huge fight with the IOC, like at that time they had only had one world championships before it was added for the Olympics. While we're here waiting and we've already had three. And so at this point, I don't even know what I think they want to eliminate the whole sport. They just kind of like set us up for failure, I feel.
What's the difference between how the women's ski jumping got accepted in 2014 and sort of where women's Nordic combined is now?
The fight for the women's ski jumping was also pretty instrumental. They had a lawsuit, but they did not win the lawsuit, but then the sport was just added. It's a
Okay.
little bit hard because I don't know. Like, I don't know what the IOC is discussing. None of what they say makes sense in the beginning. I think the biggest thing is that ski jumping has a little bit more hype and viewership versus Nordic Combined. So I think in my head, like the IOC can profit off of ski jumping while they see our sport as like too niche and too small to be able to make money off of us.
What do the men who do Nordic Combined, what's their view on this?
Yeah, if the women don't get added for 2030, sport will be eliminated out of the whole entire program, basically. Because if you think about it, there's no way that we can go another cycle of the Olympics without 50-50 equality. Because right now it's such a slap in the face to see it, but the Olympics is always like applauding themselves to be like almost gender equal in the Olympics. And it's just like, yeah, all you had to do is add one sport to make it actually equal. So in my head, we can't go another cycle without equality, or else it's really not going to look good on them. So if we don't get added, my opinion is that Nordic Combined will be taken out of the program.
And how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it feels horrible because it's almost like the IOC, they don't see that the women work just as hard. And that is really a slap in the face because all of my time and energy goes into being the best in this sport. This is my full job. And when the Olympics say we're not going to add the women because we feel that they're not progressed enough to be there, it's like, what am I doing this for? I am working just as hard as any other athlete. And it's not just like seeing on the outside of how many endurance hours or how much jumping are you getting. It's like going to bed early, eating really well, doing the recovery, stretching. There's so much more to being an athlete. It really is a full-time job. And so it really feels like we're just being spit at, like, you're not good enough for this.
I mean, I can't even imagine how tough that feels. But you've done some amazing work in terms of galvanizing, sharing this message, because it's not common knowledge that Nordic Combined for the women is not involved in the Winter Olympics. And then you've also done this short film, this documentary about Nordic Combined, and you're inspiring a whole load of people to, raise their voices. How do you feel knowing that you are a role model and you are inspiring for that current generation and the next generation?
When that decision was made, and then I felt like the whole world like came down on me, and I really questioned, like, do I even continue doing this? I was thinking about quitting or moving to ski jumping, but after I took the time to realize that there's literally one event in 4 years that we don't get to compete in. Other than that, we have a whole entire World Cup circuit, we have Youth Olympics, we have World Championships, we have everything that every other athlete has but the Olympics. So for me, it really fired me up, and I'm like, this is not right. Like, just to put it in perspective, my little brother, 2.5 years younger than me, has an amazing fighting chance to go to the Olympics this February. His sister, that does this same exact training, this same exact ski jumps, the same exact cross country courses, I put in the same hours, the same amount of like love and effort into the sport. But because I'm a woman, I'm not allowed to go to the Olympics. That in my head is just so insane and so 100 years ago. So I like that just like pushes me to want to fight so hard for the sport because it is such a cool sport, and I would hate to not or have the younger girls not want to try Nordic Combined because they can't go to the Olympics. To be honest, as an athlete, like everybody's dream at the end of the day is to go to the Olympics. So I'm trying to pave the way for the younger generation so that they don't have to question whether their dreams matter. And that is so rewarding in itself because I get so many like parents or daughters or DMs on Instagram of how they felt so inspired by my movement and my fight, and they really want to do the same and all this kind of stuff. So that makes me feel so good that what I am doing is right. And I also feel that in Nordic Combined, all the girls and the guys, they're very humble people. So we don't have these big like characters, these big social media followings. So a lot of the times I feel like it falls onto me, and it's my duty to be able to try to push this out, because if we can put pressure on the Olympics to add the women, then I think that there is a fighting chance. And What's one way to do that? That's social media and getting the word out. And I feel the documentary that I did, that was an amazing way. I got to go to a ton of film festivals, and every time I was there at that film festival, like speaking on the topic, so many people would come up and be like, I had no idea. And that's the problem. People don't have any idea that the Olympics is not 50-50. And when I put out this post on Instagram that went so viral, and I think it was perfect because then that makes people like be like, oh my God, I had no idea about this. And then they want to raise their voice, tell other people, and then that's just putting so much pressure on the Olympics to add the women. And so I so hope that that is what's going to happen. But I've also noticed that I feel so tiny and small when it comes to the IOC. It just feels that they are about money and politics, and it's honestly, it feels so snaky and disgusting what's happening, how they're able to profit off of athletes and disciplines versus like the hard work and the grit that goes to be an Olympic athlete.
And to enact that change, how can we actually help and get Nordic Combined in the Olympics for next time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because at times it's hard for me to be like, what can people do when the Olympics seems like this big and we're all these like little people trying to fight for something. But I think honestly, just raising awareness. I've had like the one social media creator, Coach Jackie, did a story on me, which like taught a lot of people about the situation. Sharing the film around, I think that film like was an amazing example of like the work I put into it. My brother, who does the same sport, and like the fight behind it. And then also I did go to a ton of schools, and it was so cool because some of their like extra credit projects were writing letters to the IOC of wanting to see women in the Olympics. So I don't know like how big of a change, like do they actually get these letters and emails? I don't know, but it has to be doing something. So whether that's writing a letter, writing an email, sharing the story, sharing the movie, just talking about it with other people, then I think that already in itself makes a change.
Definitely. Annika, thank you so much for coming on the This is Winter Sports series and for sharing your story and encouraging us all to get behind Nordic Combined, and we're all rooting for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was so amazing. And honestly, if anybody is interested, Nordic Combined is such a cool sport to watch in the wintertime.
My word, I'm outraged, and I just feel so much for Annika and all those other women Nordic Combined athletes who are thinking, what is my future? And as Annika said there, you know, she's like, do I give up? Do I go just do ski jumping? Do I just do cross-country skiing? And it is crazy. And the Olympic Committee will decide straight after this Winter Olympics what will happen. So there is a lot at stake for the women's Nordic Combined. So when you're watching the men's this February, think of the women's. Think of the sports that are excluded, because we're here for skimo being introduced. We absolutely love that. But there is another conversation that needs to happen, and that is, why are women not welcomed in the Winter Olympics who want to do Nordic Combined? Annika has an incredible strength and passion for Nordic Combined, and what she's done and the movement she's created, it's just awesome and it's so inspiring. So here's hoping that Nordic Combined for the women can get to the next Winter Olympics. And I will drop all the links into the podcast description. That'll be Annika's Instagram, and that'll be a link to the video. So if you do want to share or learn more about it, please make sure you click on those links. And on the other side of things, what I loved is that the way that she started ski jumping age 16. Anyone that's even stood at the top of a ramp, let alone a massive ski jump, you know that adrenaline is crazy. But ski jumpers just blow my mind. Oh, I think it's so cool. And just imagine that feeling flying through the air. Unbelievable. Annika is such an inspiration. And I think it really also shows that you've got to fight for what you believe. Like, no one else is going to shout from your corner unless you do it. And hopefully positive things will happen. And make sure you go and follow, share, like, subscribe to the This is Winter Sports series, brought to you by the Passion Stories podcast, because we have many more wonderful guests coming up. And I'm so excited to continue bringing this wonderful winter sports series that I just think is packed full of passion, but also so much purpose, and that's exactly why this podcast exists. And a massive thank you to Protect Our Winters UK. Go and check out their Clean Miles petition as well, because that's another thing that we can get behind, is making the planet better for all of us, and I'm so here for it. I've been Emma Cole, and thank you for listening to the Passion Stories podcast. Thanks to Tune Tank for the tunes.